Obviously, everyone here has experience with disease. I hope not too bad, but you do. Could you imagine having a disease where the medications that you take and are prescribed by very smart doctors who have your best interests at heart, that the side effects could be worse than the disease itself? I mean, like that's what a lot of disease, it's not just Crohn's disease. You know, this happens with rheumatoid arthritis, it happens with fibromyalgia. It's very, very frustrating. And I think that, you know, what I was talking about is that patients have to work together. They really do, because doctors need our help. At least that's how I see it. I don't know if you see it that way.
You know, I completely agree with you. I always tell all my patients, I'm not infertile myself. And a lot of patients will actually discount what a doctor says for two reasons. They'll feel, how could you possibly understand what I'm going through, because you don't live in my shoes. So sometimes the empathy connection is missing. Whereas when they listen to whatever I have to say from an other patient's perspective, simply because it's been there, done that, and there's no commercial incentive when another patient is educating someone else. So in fact, expert patients are definitely the best educators. They speak a language which other patients can understand. And sometimes as doctors, we have this problem is that we use so much jargon that we sometimes have to consciously think about, am I getting the message across or not?
I just want to give one other example related to clinical trials. So I'm going to a conference, some other people are too, in London next week, and it's about patients in clinical trials. As you know, many clinical trials are under-enrolled, slowed. If you're here from industry, you know it costs you sometimes $1 million a day, the delays. Why was I in a clinical trial? Remember that listserv I showed? So I said to that community, my doctor is proposing this clinical trial. Is anybody in it or knows anything about it? And several people raised their hand and said, I'm in that trial, or I've considered that trial, or I'm a month down. And then I said, can I call you on the phone? And while I really trusted my doctor, and I believed what he said, and I could get past the legalistic papers that you could die and all these things could happen, it was the connection with other patients that put me over to go ahead with the trial and to stay in the trial. Because they were ahead of me about what were the side effects, what were the requirements, might vary your case. That was one key point I wanted to make to you, is patients talking to patients in the research setting. And if you want to move research ahead, acknowledge that that communication is going on and can be very helpful.
Can I just add one thing about the research? What you just said about the research is very important, because I knew a little bit about the scientific aspect of my disease, but it's very medical jargonish, and I was invited to sit on a peer review panel, the United States government, and I was the only patient, and it was fascinating to see these really dedicated people, very PhDs, but they stopped me at lunch and told me how much I taught them. I was just telling them what it was like to live with the disease, but it was fascinating, because that's why I think everyone should be positive if you have, God forbid, an incurable disease, because doctors are finally taking into account that patients really do know what's going on, and now that they could speak to one another, I think it's really helping the research process.
So, question for anyone?
Still no question? Still.
Okay, there's one over there. That's Paul Tana.
So I think what you've all achieved individually is incredible. I'm sure you feel there are large organizations that should get behind what you're doing and help out. Who do you think those should be, and why should they get involved? Or not?
Is this being recorded?
No, so, you know, there used to be is this okay? So there used to be a time when we started, which was, we were quite naive about it all. We said, we're doing such great work, we're educating patients. So of course, pharma companies would be very interested in helping us get the message across. And guess what? Like it or not, everyone wants a pound of flesh, and that's perfectly okay. You know, if I were the pharma company CEO, I would do exactly the same thing. So we've changed our tack, and we're saying the only people who actually save money when a patient doesn't fall ill is the health insurer, because the trouble with a lot of what we call the healthcare industry is it's actually an illness care industry. You know, I only make money when someone has a problem and then comes to me. I don't make money when I help them to have a baby in their bedroom. So obviously something's wrong and something's broken. And I think that's the great thing about the health insurer is that they can actually play a positive role. Unfortunately, as we all know in the US, they've mucked up their reputation, just like pharma companies have mucked up their reputation. And perhaps just like the medical profession has done that, because why are patients so suspicious about what doctors have to say? They always feel there's a hidden agenda, there's a commercial agenda. Can I really trust this guy? Is he doing the surgery because I actually going to benefit, or is he doing the surgery because he's going to earn some more money? And that's actually the elephant in the room, which no one talks about. And if health insurers say, look, we actually benefit if we can keep you alive for longer, keeping you out of the hospital, I think patients get it, that the interests are then aligned, and they are the ones where it makes business sense for them to continue investing in patient education.
I'm a little reluctant to say who I think should donate, because there's so many worthy causes out there that, you know, rare diseases and things like that, that who am I to tell someone? But I will tell you this. When I was an entertainment lawyer in Hollywood, I used to get phone calls from agents and managers of some very, very famous people who had Crohn's disease, but they couldn't come out and say it because there's this bathroom stigma attached to it, and they would call me for advice. Yeah, it was pretty cool. But they've supported it to a lot. You know, I've gotten a lot of money from very big names that I'm not allowed to talk about. So that's been pretty interesting. But as with every other disease, the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation of America is like the mother hub for, you know, my illness. And they do what I do, but it's very corporate. And I think patients, real patients who are very sick and are online every day, they get turned off by the corporatizing of their health, because they know somewhere the CCFA, that's the acronym for the organization, they've taken money from pharmaceutical companies, and you know, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's an agenda and they have to satisfy it. So it's very difficult. I mean, I'd love money from pharmaceuticals, but I think I would be compromising my integrity if I did that.
I don't have exactly that view, because actually I take great joy in prying money with no strings attached from multiple pharmaceutical companies in a therapeutic area to help them be part of doing the right thing where they have no control. So they and their competitors, multiple players. And then if there can be other donors, that's great too, and I'd love to know some of your Hollywood celebrities. But at any rate, the point of it is, I think pharma companies and even medical diagnostic companies and medical equipment companies, GE and Siemens, the big iron kind of people, I think should all be supporting this sort of movement of patients to patients. Okay? And I was having a conversation with one of the consultants for major pharma here in the digital area, and I said, why can't industry donate some of your time and expertise to help us? Okay? The Sanofi executive yesterday talked about the employees donating by corporate mandate some of their time individually to work with different patient groups. So here we have the brightest minds in digital here. Some of you work with some of the biggest corporations in the healthcare field in the world. Why can't some of your time or some of your technology be used with budding patient opinion leaders, patient organizations like us, and not just the corporate ones that are established like Michael just mentioned?
Okay, well, I'm going to thank our three participants for a very exciting presentation of their initiatives.
Thank you.